Welcome to our last section in Chapter 3, Logic. This is 3.6. It's titled DeMorgan's Laws. And in this section, we're going to learn how to do the negation of a conditional, as well as with DeMorgan's laws, we're going to do the negation of conjunctions and disjunctions. So let's get started. The negation of a conditional statement. So remember, the conditional has the arrow, and it says the negation of a conditional is equivalent to P conjunction not Q. P conjunction not Q. And the way we can prove that it is the negation is they found the truth table for the conditional, which is right here in this column. If P then Q, the results end up with true, false, true, true. And then we take this statement on the right, P and not Q, and we find the truth table or truth values for that statement. And you can see, if you look at the first case, the conditional is true, and then we have the conjunction, which is false. On the second case, conditional is false, conjunction is true. So you can see as we go through each one of these that they have opposite truth values. So therefore, if it's opposite truth values, it is the negation. So once again, the negation of a conditional is equivalent to P and not Q. Write the negation of the following statement. If too much homework is given, comma, a class should not be taken. So they defined P as too much homework is given, and they defined Q as a class should be taken. So what should we pay attention to? That word not after the comma. So that has a negation on there. So since this is a conditional, we'll look at the first part of the sentence. It says, if too much homework is given. So that is P. If P, then a class should not be taken, not Q. So that is the original statement. If P, then not Q. They want us to find the negation, write the negation of the statement. So therefore, what we're going to do is put the negation sign right in front of it and put parentheses around it. And if you remember on the previous slide, it said that the negation of a conditional is. So what you do is you take the P that is up front and leave it just as is in front of the arrow, put your and symbol, and then the opposite of the second or the consequent. So the opposite of not Q is just Q. So this would be our symbolic form, but it says write the negation. So we're going to translate this into a sentence, P and Q. So we would just say, too much homework is given, and Q, a class should be taken. And this is the statement that represents the negation. This is a similar exercise to the last one. It says write the negation of the conditional statement. So the first thing we need to do is to translate the original statement into symbolic form. If I am in El Paso, that'll be my P statement, then I am in Texas, Q. So we'll say our statement P is I am in El Paso, Q is I am in Texas. So if I am in El Paso, then I'm in Texas is a conditional, if P, then Q. Next, we want to write the negation of that conditional statement. So once again, I will put a negative sign in front and close my conditional in parentheses. And we will rewrite this. All right, so again, we're going to take the antecedent and leave it just the way it is. Place my and then the consequent, we're going to do the opposite of the consequent, not Q. So the negation is going to be P and not Q. So then we have to go back and interpret that into a sentence form. So we said P is I am in El Paso. So we're looking for I am in El Paso. We're looking for and. Then not Q is I am not in Texas. And the one that it seems to match is right here, D. I am in El Paso and I am not in Texas. My not Q. DeMorgan's laws is addressing the negation of a conjunction and a negation of a disjunction. So if you're taking the negation of a conjunction, this is number 1 up here, it changes to a not P or not Q. So notice that the symbol changes from a rooftop to a V, from an and to an or, and you take the negation of each of the statements inside the parentheses. For the disjunction number 2, and we're taking the negation of a disjunction now, notice it changes from a disjunction to a conjunction, and you take the negation of each of the letters inside the parentheses. So to prove the point here, they did the truth table once again, and you can see that the negation of a conditional, which ends up being false, true, 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 is equivalent to not P or not Q. So once again, they're proving number 1 by using a truth table. Use DeMorgan's laws to write a statement that is equivalent to the following statement. It is not true that frogs and fish both have fins. So we had a statement similar to that earlier where it said, it is not true that both frogs and fish have fins. So I'm basically saying the same thing. I'm just a little play on the words. What you want to think about is we have parentheses right here. Frogs and fish have fins. So my P statement would be frogs have fins. My Q statement would be fish have fins. And let me just write that out so you'll remember to keep your simple statements. Frogs have fins. And my Q, fish have fins. I'm going to take the statement and translate it into a symbolic form. So it is not true that, there's that not. So that is a negation right there. So this becomes the negation parentheses, and we have an and between frogs and fish. So this is P and Q. So when we have a negation of a conjunction, we are using DeMorgan's laws. To write an equivalent statement, which is what they want, an equivalent statement, you take your symbol, which is now the rooftop, and you're going to reverse it and make it a disjunction. And what's in front of your conjunction is a P, so we're going to do the opposite, the negation, and negation of Q. Not P or not Q. And at this point now, we just need to interpret our result here into words. So not P would make it frogs do not have fins, or and fish do not have fins. And this one will match answer A. Frogs do not have fins, or fish do not have fins. Use DeMorgan's laws to write a statement that is equivalent to the following statement. So this is asking us to do the same thing that the previous problem did. It's just a different scenario. And this says, it is not the case that my great uncle wrote a sonata or my aunt danced a jig. It is not the case that my great uncle wrote a sonata. We'll say that this is my P. There's your or. My aunt danced a jig. That will be Q. So in this case here, it is not the case. This is our negation. So the original statement is negation, parentheses, P or Q. And once again, we will use DeMorgan's laws for the negation of a disjunction, which is the same approach as we did on the last one. So since this is an or, we're going to change it to an and. And what is inside the parentheses in front of the or is a P. So we will do the opposite or the negation of it. So not P. And then what is after the or inside the parentheses is Q. So we will do the opposite of that one, not Q. So not P and not Q is the equivalent symbolic form. And now we need to turn around and rewrite that into words. So if my great uncle wrote a sonata is P, then not P is my great uncle did not write a sonata. We're changing this to an and for a conjunction. And we will also negate Q, which means my aunt did not dance a jig. So we're looking for my great uncle did not write a sonata and my aunt did not dance a jig. And that would be this first answer A. My great uncle did not write a sonata. Conjunction and my aunt did not dance a jig. So there is your not P and not Q. Write a statement that is equivalent to, if it rains, I do not go outdoors and I study. The statements are defined for us. P is it rains, Q, I go outdoors, R, I study. So in this case here, we'll take the original statement and translate it into a symbolic form. If it rains, P, conditional, comma, I do not go outdoors and I study. So what's following the comma needs to be placed in parentheses. They belong together. I do not go outdoors is a negation. So that's not Q. And it's rooftop, I study, R. And this is a conditional. All right, so the equivalent statement for a conditional is going to be a contrapositive. The equivalent statement, we need to create an equivalent statement to this. So we need to change this to a contrapositive. And if you recall on a contrapositive, what is the antecedent changes to the consequent, and the consequent changes to the antecedent, and then we take the negation of both sides. So first of all, I will go ahead and rewrite this as not Q and R, and then place the P as the consequent. To complete the contrapositive portion of it, we need to take the negation of the antecedent and the consequent. All right, now looking at that second statement, we can rewrite this into words, but what we really need to do is focus on getting rid of those parentheses. So we're going to take this negation of a conjunction, which means we are now going to use DeMorgan's laws to do the negation of the conjunction. All right, so what we need to do is focusing on the antecedent only. We are going to change the conjunction into a disjunction. And then what is in front of the conjunction, we're going to take the opposite of not Q and say Q. And then what's after the conjunction, we're going to take the negation of R. Now, since this is still your antecedent, we are going to keep that in parentheses and then just rewrite your consequent. So this is the symbolic form of your equivalent statement. Now what we need to do is to take this equivalent form and change it into words. So since this is a conditional, I will start with if Q is I go outdoors, or we're doing not R, I do not study, then not P. Then it does not rain. If I go outdoors or I do not study, then it does not rain. This is an equivalent statement to if it rains, I do not go outdoors and I study. Express the following statement in if-then form, then write the statements converse, inverse, contrapositive, and negation. Wow. So it reads, no grass is sufficient for no lawn. No grass is sufficient for no lawn. So when we think about this one, we have to change it to, we would say grass, no grass is going to be not P. Is sufficient is another word for using a conditional. And for no lawn, that would be not Q. So having a lawn is Q, having grass is P, having no grass is not P, and having no lawn is not Q. So I have if not P, then not Q. So it says write the statement in if-then form, which is what we just did, and it says choose the correct answer below. So another way that we can restate this would be C, if there is no grass, then there is no lawn. And that is equivalent to what we just finished writing. The next thing we want to take a look at is to write the converse of the statement. Now, what we did was we created our original statement, and we'll always go back to this original statement to do all these other rewrites for converse, inverse, contrapositive, and negation. So for the converse of a conditional is that we're just going to reverse the order. So this becomes if not Q, then not P. And to translate that into words would be if there is no lawn, then there is no grass. That will be answer C. So once again, the converse is just reverse the order of the antecedent and the consequent. Next, we're going to take the inverse. And for the inverse of a conditional, you leave everything as is. You just do the opposite of. So in this case here, I am going to leave it as, for the original statement, if not P, then not Q. And then we take the negation of both sides. And when we do our rewrite for this, the negation of a negated P is just P. And then the negation of a negation of Q is just Q. So the statement we need to translate is P, if P, then Q. So the answer for this one is, if there is grass, then there is a lawn. And once again, that will be answer C. We'll move on to the next page to finish out with the contrapositive and the negation. Express the following statement in if-then form, then write the statement's converse. So we've already done this from the previous page, so I am just going to mark out. We've already did the converse and the inverse. What we're looking at is the contrapositive. So the original statement, when we did the rewrite for this one, changing it to a conditional, it became, if not P, then not Q. And this is the original statement. The next item that we need to do is to rewrite the contrapositive given this conditional. So on the contrapositive, what we have to do is reverse the order of the antecedent and the consequent, and then take the negation of both sides. So that would be not Q, then not P. Take the negation of both sides and do another rewrite. This will become Q, then P. If Q, then P would be the statement representing contrapositive. And this would be, if there is a lawn, then there is grass. So the answer would be A. If there is a lawn, which is Q, then there is grass, is P. Okay, and the last one we have is to write the negation of that original statement. So we'll take that original statement, if not P, then not Q, place it all in parentheses, and they want us to take the negation. Next, we'll write the equivalent form of the negation of a conditional. And what you do is you write the antecedent just the way it is, not P, put a conjunction sign, and do the opposite of the consequent. The opposite of not Q makes it Q. So the equivalent statement here would be not P and Q. So we're looking for the answer that satisfies that. Not P and not Q is going to be there is no grass and there is a lawn. So this would be answer C. There is no grass and there is no lawn. So this concludes chapter 3 in logic. And if you need to look for the truth table notes or formula sheets, it is listed in the formula book on Blackboard and also in my math lab.